morning, everyone, and welcome to Think Future. My name's Chris Kalaboukis, and once again, we're coming at you live from deep in the heart of Silicon Valley, California. We're talking innovation, startups, the future, not necessarily those, and not necessarily in that order. If you're watching on YouTube, smack that subscribe button and hit that bell so you can be notified when a new show comes online. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast service, please subscribe and please drop a note on Apple Podcasts. I greatly appreciate it. Now, here we have another example of everything will happen. The only question is when. I read the other day that a Tesla truck working with Pepsi made a uninterrupted 500-mile run. And I thought to myself, wow, isn't that amazing? Of course, it's about 5 years after Elon said that the Tesla truck was going to be ready to make the 500-mile run. And I'm sure that 500 miles is actually kind of a small number when it comes to trucks, because if you think about it, I mean, don't these trucks go for thousands of miles? I mean, sure, they might have to stop and fuel up in between, but doesn't it take minutes for them to fuel up and go instead of stopping for 2 or 3 hours to get juiced up with electricity? You see? And of course, the media is playing it for, oh my God, look at all the truckers are going to be out of work because the Tesla truck is here. Yeah, the very first Tesla truck is here. It's a prototype. It went 500 miles. And that has to be charged for 10 hours or something like that. I mean, come on, people. It's not there yet. Just like the multiverse, just like crypto, just like electric vehicles, none of this stuff is here yet. And I'll tell you why. Because if you ask me, electric vehicles are actually an interim technology. They're an interim technology until we get to the real one. And I'll tell you what I mean. Okay? So think about the fax machine for a minute. Now, some people would say to you, what the heck's a fax machine? What's a fax machine? Chris, I've never heard of a fax machine. I've never seen a fax machine. Probably the same people who've never seen a typewriter. But a fax machine, if you don't know, is this machine that basically digitized paper, right? So you would have a fax machine, and I would have a fax machine, and then I would take paper and I would feed it into the fax machine. And what it would do is it would call you. It would call your fax machine, and it would take an exact copy of what I fed in, and it would spit the paper out at the other end, and it would look exactly the same. It was an unaltered version of the document. And the technology for a fax machine actually came out a long time before it was popularized. Long time. And then it started getting popularized in the 70s and 80s. I forget exactly when it started getting popularized, but I think the technology was available in the 20s or something like that, because this is how long it takes for things to happen. Things will happen. Everything will happen. We just don't know when. So fax machines were invented. All of a sudden, everybody had to have a fax machine because it became a legal thing. Even though you were taking that thing and you were shoving it through a machine which digitized this document and sent it over the wires to the person at the other end, these two documents were considered the same. So once I'm able to, because think of it this way, prior to the fax machine, I would have to personally deliver a contract to whoever wanted to send a contract to. If I wanted somebody to do something for me legally, I would have to personally deliver it, have them sign it, and personally pick it up and take it back and make photocopies or whatever. But with a fax machine, I could talk to anybody around the world who had one and say, hey, I'm going to send you the contract. You sign it and fax it back to me. And when I heard about the fax machine, I thought to myself, that's an interim technology. That's an interim technology, because by the time fax machines became popular, email was already here. And I thought to myself, well, the fax machine is simply an interim technology until we figure out some way to send documents by email. That's right. I said that like 20 years ago. And people poo-pooed it. They said, oh no, we're never going to be able to send documents by email. And I say, yeah? And then what happened? They invented a scanner, because printers had already been invented. So all they did is they figured out how to do a scanner by taking apart a photocopier. Because what do you think a photocopier does? A photocopier has a scanner and a printer. It's a scanner and printer combination slammed together. So they invented a scanner. So now you can take documents and scan them and email them. And then the person at the other end could print it, sign it, scan it, and send it back. Boom. It's the same as a fax machine, but electronic. So what happened then? Once the documents started becoming electronic, then I think it was President Clinton who signed a bill that said electronic signatures are A-OK. You don't need a wet signature on everything. And those folks who don't understand what a wet signature is, it's an actual signature with a pen. You don't need a wet signature on everything. Some things are okay to sign electronically. And once he sort of busted open the borders for electronic signatures, all of a sudden we were able to do electronic signatures. And now if you do, I mean, who does anything by paper or fax machine? Fax machines have gone the way of the dodo. Extinct. Hardly anybody has a fax machine anymore. I think doctors and lawyers sometimes have fax machines because they still have some clients who have fax machines, but fax machines, hardly anybody. What do people do? They use things like DocuSign to sign documents. So I bet you the last time you did anything where you needed to sign something, you did it via DocuSign. And you did it via DocuSign or some similar technology that sent you a link and then you could sign on your phone or whatever. So this is what I mean by interim technology. Fax machines were an interim technology. There was a better technology after fax machines that had not really taken off yet, and that is the scanning and the emailing and the printing, or the scanning and the scanning and the electronic signatures. Right? It hadn't taken off yet. It was here, but very few people used it. But I could see that that would be the technology that would replace fax machines. And if you ask me, electric vehicles are in the exact same spot. Electric vehicles, electric trucks, any of these electric motive power vehicles, they're in the same space. They are an interim technology which can move us to the next technology. We'll use this technology, and this is what happened with the fax machine. The fax machine went everywhere. Everybody bought a fax machine. Everybody bought a fax machine and an answering machine combination or whatever. Everybody had a fax machine. And now nobody has a fax machine. And the same thing's going to happen with electronic vehicles. Electronic vehicles will be everywhere. And in fact, we're going to have so many electronic vehicles, it's going to test the grid. We will not be able to support all these electronic vehicles because the grid won't be able to support it. We need to upgrade the grid. But if you ask me, there are other motive technologies beyond electric vehicles, which is what I think we should be seriously looking at. Things like hydrogen automobiles. There's probably others out there that I can't think of off the top of my head. But if you think about it, isn't it possible that the electric vehicle, because of its limitations, and sure, we're always working on improving the limitations. We're always working on improving range. We're always working on improving this. We're always working on improving that. And unfortunately, all these car companies, they've decided to take all their great new designs and make them electric vehicles. Isn't it possible that electric vehicles, battery-operated vehicles, have a limitation? They have an upper limit that we can't get past because we can't get as much battery power as we want. We can't store as much power. We need to be able to create the energy on the vehicle, just like we do with internal combustion engines. So we do have a technology that's out there. It's called hydrogen. If you look at hydrogen-fueled cars, there's plenty of fleets that have hydrogen. There's plenty of cars out there that already have hydrogen. There's the Mirai. I think it's a Toyota Mirai that runs on hydrogen. There's hydrogen pumps here and there. And if you ask me, hydrogen is the follow-on technology. It is the technology that is coming on beyond electric vehicles. And we're so focused and fixated on electric vehicles that we can't see the better technology beyond electric vehicles. And if you ask me, that's where we need to go. We need to leap forward into other motive powers that are better than battery. Or if you don't want to do that, then why not do both? Why not any and all? I mean, I talked to somebody from the energy industry and he said, we're going to do any and all. We're going to have internal combustion engines, we're going to have electric engines, we're going to have hydrogen engines, we're going to have all the engines. There's no reason for us to stop using the internal combustion engine just because most people have electric cars. There's no reason for us to stop researching hydrogen because most people have electric cars. Let's keep going. People need to move from point A to point B. Let's figure out the most effective way of doing it, and it's not necessarily electric vehicles. Let's look at the technology beyond electric vehicles. Let's look at any and all technology, and then press those into service. That's it for me for today. See you next time, and until then, don't forget to think future.